welcome to episode 15 of the Ammo Hour. Today's guest is someone who I've met through the running of my charity football team that I'm part of. You've probably heard me speak about them before. Our name is Glasgow Saints Football Club, or Glasgow Saints F.C. on Twitter and Facebook. You can also check our website, glasgowsaints.co.uk. Excuse the traffic passing by. So we set up to be a football team to combat isolation, in the neighbourhood, in the wider city as a whole. People who want to find a place to play, be welcomed, to train, to meet people, and to kind of play football in what I would see as the right spirit of the game, encouragement. Being competitive, but never in the way that puts other people down for human error, and try to rise people up rather than break them down. The other side to that is we thought we could use that kind of movement of so many people in a large squad for more than just 3 points on a Sunday. And to date, we've raised nearly £10,000 for different charities within our community, mostly homeless shelters, food banks, night shelters, things like that. So something that everybody attached to the project can be extremely proud of, but also something that's really enjoyable. And the most enjoyable thing about it is just meeting a lot of the players that I've brought into the organisation. A real pleasure to play with some great players, but even more so to meet some really good people. And today's guest, Ritchie Munro, is both of those. Firmly off the back, if you do follow the Instagram account, firmly off the back of his second man of the match in a row. We'll probably need to ensure that doesn't keep going. Looks fair for everyone. But no, a class act on the pitch. But one of these people I'm just been talking about, even more classy off the pitch. Just a super nice guy, really great stories to tell, really laid back approach, and just a kind-hearted dude, which is exactly the kind of leaders and examples of players and people we want at Glasgow Saints. So a really kind of funny story popped up in our team chat a while back about an impromptu drunken party night, which turned into him spending over a decade over in Asia, and subsequently representing a national team there for rugby and Aussie rules football, which is something he had no experience of before he went on his travels. So pretty interesting story, and at the time, this was actually recorded, I think, in the second lockdown. It was a good few weeks ago, months probably, and I'd just been holding off and posting this for when I kind of got back to grips with the podcast. Obviously we've had a couple of episodes out in the last couple of weeks, really excited to share this story. So this one's just, there's nothing to sell, nothing to plug. He's not on this podcast because he's trying to push anything. It's just a nice catch up with a guy that I'm lucky to call a friend now, and a really cool story about planning a wee trip with your mates and then absolutely changing your life in a really crazy and I'm sure enjoyable way. So thanks so much for Ritchie for coming on and chatting. As always, if you're listening to the podcast for the first time, I hope you enjoy it. Please check out the other episodes. Please leave a review, please like, please share. The easiest place to find all the links for the podcast. So if you want to listen to it, if you want to listen to the back catalogue, or if you want to watch the interviews, they're all recorded over Zoom. Actually Skype, I'm not a Zoom baller, I'm not paying for that. It's just to head to the Instagram page, and that's just at the Ammo Hour, and there's a link tree on the bio, and you can just catch where to watch everything there. So I hope you enjoy this episode. This is episode number 15 of the Ammo Hour with my good friend Ritchie Munro. Okay, so I'm here with Ritchie Munro, the semi-pro Pirlo.
What an intro.
How you doing?
Aye, not bad, big man. I'll take that though. Aye, big
Semi-pro
time.
player.
I coined that term in my own mind after seeing you train a few times with our team, and that day when we were playing down at Hampden, everyone just there in their kit, and you show up flip flops, sunglasses, sports bag.
Mate,
Like, phenomenal.
that wasn't me trying to look cool. I'd played football the day before, and it was like the first pre-season game, and my legs were in pieces, and like the most I could muster was like a pair of shorts on and flip flops. So I wasn't trying to be a ticket. I was just struggling to get on the park.
No, that's all good anyway, man. It looked absolutely fantastic. But yeah, no, you got to wear the flip flops when the calves are sore, eh?
That's class. I know. I always get the flip flops on going to training. But last night coming to training, I had them walking down the street, and my girlfriend's coming up from work, and she's just like, "The fuck are you wearing? You can't wear them in the street." And I was like, "I'm just going to train."
Mate, I do the same. I wear flip flops to the shops all the time, and my wife's just like, you can go yourself. But listen, I'm not trying to press anyone, comfort.
I know. My feet, I can't handle it anymore. Like even last night, my ankles are just in pieces at training.
I'm the same.
How many boys were on the sidelines last night out of what, 14? 3 people halfway through just sitting down with pulled calves or ankles going. It's not right, man.
It's just after such a long time out,
Aye.
it's just obviously hard on the body. I was even thinking, we're training on AstroTurf, like solid ground, diving and doing full saves and stuff like that. Like, might need to limit it to one a week or do the grass sessions because your body just gets in bits, man.
Oh, it's horrible, I know. So it's my hips that get it after AstroTurf. I don't know what it is. My hips and my lower back. So it's starting to feel it at my age. You can't.
Yeah. So obviously for people listening in, we play for a football team, and I'll do a wee bit more background in the intro. Charity football team, cares about the community. A lot of good work going on. But you also play with a Saturday team. Part of the reason I want to get you on, you've got a great story about sports in your past as well, which we'll get on to. But how long have you, obviously, without blowing smoke, like you're a very talented footballer. I've played with players of all different levels, and to me it's quite clear that at some point you must have been quite close to a kind of pro level. What was your background with that?
Oh, I don't know if I'd go that far. I was always, when I was younger, I was really small. So it was like, I'm 30. I'm going to be 37 this summer, right? So we're talking like mid-90s when we were growing up playing football. And back then in particular, when you're talking about younger age groups like 13s, 14s, 15s, when you started looking at contracts and stuff like that, a massive focus was on the size of the boys. Mm-hmm. So thinking back, a lot of the guys that went on to play for Rangers or the likes, or St Johnstone, actually, Dundee were quite good youth teams, Dundee United, Motherwell, they were all massive. So by the time we were 14, like, boy, they went on to play for your mob, St Johnstone, David Odds' son, David Odds, he was at my school, and he was the sort of pinnacle of our age group. He was signed to Rangers from the age he was 12 or something, signed to St Johnstone at 15. But I was tiny, just couldn't compete, mate. So I didn't really focus on that, and then just played amateur all my life after that. Right. So didn't really get into it properly until, I don't know, late teens, something like that. Managed to get in at like a few sessions with Rangers when I was about 14, 15, but I just wasn't good enough. So it was in and around there. I remember training at Scotstoun with them when Scotstoun first opened. Maybe went to 4 or 5 training sessions, and the gaffer just came over and he was like, "You're as good as the other boys, but you're not going to improve the team." And that was probably the highest I ever got. So I wasn't going to get anywhere near stuff like that. But always just loved playing football, So I was always in about amateur stuff and amateur setups.
Do you look at how football is now, and think, how it's more on technique and not so much on physique and athleticism? Do you think obviously a bit of regrets, or is it just what it is?
Oh, just what it is. I mean, it's better for, particularly in a country like Scotland, because we were kind of in the dark ages with that for a long time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that was the sort of tag on Scottish football in general, wasn't it? The Scottish League. When I was growing up, it was like, you just lump it long, get a big guy up front, get a couple of solid boys in the middle that will just chop people up, and you went. The Scottish League wasn't really looked upon as sort of being technically proficient or guys with skill. So I'm glad that it's evolved from that. You look at the Scotland setup, like, I know we've had a couple of not great results midweek, but the technical quality of the players is there to see. You know what I mean? That game's kind of gone, and you look at someone like Ollie McBurney up top, like he's becoming a player that doesn't really exist anymore in that kind of setup. Even though he's got a lot to offer certain teams and types of play, it's just the way the game's evolved. Managers aren't really looking to play that, and they don't want to be pigeonholed as sort of long ball tacticians, you know. So it's just moved miles away for that. So I'm glad for Scottish football that we're not stuck in the era I grew up in.
100%. If you look at, you know, our best players now, they're all shorter and more technical. I think Strachan kind of bleated on about it to a detriment at points, because I remember at the time Jordan Rhodes was like outscoring anyone in like league football, and he just would not pick him, and he kept saying this soundbite about we didn't have big guys in Scotland, and it was like he was kind of trying to prove a point, which was, for me, that's just going the other way. You shouldn't have to pigeonhole anything. But certainly, it looks like, you know, our archetype of a player now is more like I'm again a Forrest on the wing, you know, like a Shanklin coming through the ranks up top. They're all more like not small players, but definitely not big, huge athletes, and they more do the ball work, you know.
Definitely. I mean, easy for Strang to say. He was like, what, 5'5" footballing genius. Do you know what I mean? And then he's given out to people that are bigger than him. So I mean, he's seen football from a totally different perspective all his life, right? And he's managed to reach the absolute pinnacle of football in the Premier League. Yeah. What a talent he was. So he'll see it a certain way. But I don't think you can put that across the board for players. Like, you can't teach them to have that kind of quality. But I think that's why players become a certain way. Like you mentioned, someone like Pirlo, right? One of the best all time. But I think you're forced to adapt based on your physicality. So if you look at someone like Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, Pirlo, all much slighter guys, much smaller, grew up in juniors when they were when players around them were much bigger. So they have to develop other aspects of their game, right? So you associate with them, great first touch, great vision, that mid to long ball, they've got it. So I think good things come from it, and if it's allowed to flourish a wee bit, and I think that's kind of what coaches focus on nowadays, technical proficiency, and then see what it develops into. So I think great things come from it. You know, you're kind of forced to develop other things and not just rely on physical aspects. 100%. And now to a point where you just can't, it just won't work for you.
It's a metaphor for everything, without getting super deep. Like, everyone's going to have different things to come to the party. Like, you know, I'm not an example because I'm in the later stages of career and injuries and stuff. But, you know, last night at training, I'm not going to look at Alan Rose doing the sprint drills and get down on myself. Like, that's okay. That's never been my game, even when I was in my prime. You know, when I played back in midfield and centre back, even at my fittest, when I had shape to my body and I was one of the fittest in the team, I would never win a race against anyone. Fabregas looked amazing, but he was never fast. So you then had to be better at the long game, or what Wenger used to say. Some people, he was talking about the bikes on the Tour de France as an analogy. Some boys are the sprint, some boys are the mountain. So if you've not got the sprint, you have to make sure you're nipping at people's heels, a bit of a Fletcher technique, you know, the whole game. Don't give them a rest rather than try to beat them on 2 and 3 sprints and stuff. So everyone brings something to the party.
I think that's true. And I think that's a difficult thing for younger guys in football to realise, especially at amateur level, right? Because you're there, you're dedicated and you want to have a laugh and you go training a couple of times and you play on a Saturday. But the younger boys, it's difficult to understand like what you can and can't do. You want to do everything. You want to have an impact in the game. And what I noticed in the younger boys now, what they look for to have an impact in the game is try to skin people, try to play pure Hollywood passes. And there's just a wee bit like additional flair that doesn't really translate to amateur football, right? Because you can't just be pinging 50-yard balls all over the park and skinning 2 and 3 players and scoring worldies. Just don't have it in your locker. So there needs to be a sort of element of realisation in amateur football. And younger players, like, this is what you can do, focus on that, this is how you can add to the team. So I struggle with it a wee bit because you know, like when you're playing amateur football, you give the ball away, just get pumped and it's just a long ball or whatever kills you. So I struggle with that with the younger generation just because I grew up playing FIFA.
Yeah.
It's a totally different approach to football that we grew up with. We grew up with sort of hard work and do your bit, whereas that's not quite the same there. They've got other things that we don't have, like they can do things that we didn't dream of doing when we were their age, but
for sure,
it's definitely on different wavelengths with certain stuff.
Yeah, man. Like I trying to hit that home to a lot of guys. It's not about like because they've not played in this league because the pandemic's delayed us by a year. We go into this league. I've played with teams who have got some real ballers, but they're very rarely the game winners unless they're in the left wing forward, right wing forward, or centre forward position. It's all about having a really strong unit to get the ball into those games.
So,
all good.
My dog's half is not. Come here. Sorry, big man.
Oh, don't worry.
That's it. We get my mum's dog through the week. My mum's in the NHS, so me and Mary look after him. And anytime he hears any noise, he just goes mental.
Start of the show.
There you go. Start of the show.
That's one of your best managers in the history of the game, Pep Guardiola. That's literally what his philosophy is. It's like rigid as hell. If you're looking at it like a football manager thing, everyone thinks he's got this free flowing football. Not at all in the first 2/3. It's rigid as hell. Absolute generals. Everyone doing their job in their little squares. And then he'll give, Henri talked about it a lot, then he'll give the players the freedom in that final third to make up their mind. But usually by then it's just a cut-back pass and a finish. You try and drum home to like silky wingers. Use your speed, use your athleticism, use your skill to beat the man at the right moment and then lay on the simple pass. If you assist 4 goals on a Sunday and we win the game, I guarantee you everyone's going to be wanting to buy you drinks rather than we lose 3-1, but you scored this worldie and run away celebrating. No one cares,
Oh, definitely, mate. And like you talking about Man City, how many tap-ins did they score? I know they've got unbelievable quality all over the park, but that comes from years of training and, like you're saying, build up to a certain point. I've never seen a team like that just get 1-2s to the byline, 1-2s for the 18-yard line, get to the byline, cut back, and you're just talking tap-ins. Like Gabriel Jesus is making fucking 150 grand a week, scoring 6-yard goal. Like he can't believe he's luck.
Exactly.
I don't know.
And it goes to FIFA because I'll sit and watch with my nephew and those goals and they go, oh, that's a scum goal. I'm like, what? On FIFA, you're not allowed to do that against your mates. What do you mean? You're not allowed to go down the line and cut it back. That's a scum goal. And you're like,
is it? Is that pure dirty tactics? Is it like a cheat in FIFA?
Exactly. You're not allowed to use speed and then cut it back. I'm like, mate, that's how I score all my goals in these games.
I'd love to be able to do that in real life.
Exactly. No, you need to
run past somebody.
Do that. Yeah. I'm with you there, man.
Different class that though. You can't defend against it, can you? That one-touch stuff. You hear about it all the time. Remember that growing up? The ball moves faster than players and all that kind of stuff. Those sort of cliches that you hear. But then you see when you play against it, you can't touch the ball. It's a nightmare. We that last game of last season, we went up to Oban. Worst weather ever. I mean, the worst weather I've ever played in my life. I can't believe the game went ahead. And all these absolute units from Oban just came down. Didn't even flinch. All 6'4", just pinging the ball about in this weather. And we didn't know what we were doing. We were just getting blown all over the park. But they just did this tactic. They were pitching at their striker and just 1-2s all the way, and we just couldn't touch the ball. 60 minutes in, we were just gasping, It's just minging to play against.
That's the fine balance with this, because I'm sure a lot of our boys will listen to this episode having yourself on and stuff, and it really is trying to hit home, not trying to like annoy people with how much goes in the group sometimes, but really need to drum it in that we've got such talented guys. Absolutely. They wouldn't be here if they weren't, and we do things all the right ways, but there's teams in this league that are no mugs. They've played bigger levels and they just enjoy the pace of a Sunday now in their life. It's their life balance. So individually, I'll go on record. I think we've got, as a whole, probably the most or one of the top 3 talented team in that league. But these boys play together, and we've really got to listen to the coach, listen to philosophy, listen to the more experienced guys, yourself, Rory, guys like that, Basti, and really just play to our strengths and be relentless. If just the best form of defence is to just be in their faces and be constant.
No doubt, I agree with that 100%. It's like you're saying, especially at amateur level, you get a wee bit of pressure and you take a bad touch, or you make a bad pass, or you're knackered and you just give the ball away. So just just staying on top of them. But do you know how I ended up playing for Glasgow Saints?
No.
Your mate Phil Robbins.
Oh, that's right.
Because you're good pals, aren't you?
Yeah, very good pals, yeah.
And we were down at East on Duke Street, and knew the boys there. And he came in, he's like, he knew I played Saturday, and he was like, "Oh, do you fancy I give my sevens this week?" I said, "That sounds good." And he's like, "Oh, it's in the East End, so dead easy." So he goes, "Come up on a Tuesday." And we got up, and he drove us up there, and we picked someone else in the way. And as I'm putting my boots on, I don't think it was yourself, but it was someone starts putting cones out and handing bibs, and I was like, "Phil, what sevens is this?" And he's like, "Oh no, I think it's just a wee warm up and that." It turned out it was like full training, and you were talking about like the team and all this, and I was looking at Phil going, "What's going on here?" And he's like, I just starting a wee team, thought you might want to get involved in that, and I thought if I told you, so he sort of built the wheel up. Right. So I got, as soon as you get one session and you know what it's like, and obviously what you guys were doing with the community aspect of it, like I've said to you before, that was a big part of staying involved and getting into it. But Phil totally duped me, and then he's disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah. He's going to get involved in the community sessions and be a bit of a, not a coach, but an unofficial kind of player in there. You know Phil's character. He's been on the podcast, so the listeners will know him as well. Just absolutely brilliant guy. And he'll be a really, exactly, an ambassador for people coming who maybe from different backgrounds, maybe coming for the first time, don't know anyone else. Really welcome them in when we're away doing the first team training. I need to have people there I can trust that'll go embody what the club's about, you know, and that role's, it doesn't require anything official from him, but it'll be worth its weight in gold, you know.
Aye, he's perfect for that. Everyone's totally drawn to him. Great guy.
Yeah, totally, man.
So I got me with that.
So that's brilliant. I need to give him a wee finder's fee. But obviously, yeah, as I said, you've played at like the Saturday level, and obviously going around affiliate kind of SFA amateur level, it'll be high level. Like, how are you feeling about kind of the first games with this? Is it the unknown? Obviously, you know, as I said, the level of teams in this league, some are lower level, but some are pretty high and would be in affiliate leagues. It just suits them, what their club stands for. This league's a community league, so it's quite a deceiving one. I remember going in and playing the first game. This was 3 years ago for United Glasgow up front. Scored 2, and I was like, yes, I'm going to be like... Murata was firing them in at that point. I was like, yes, fancy myself watching Murata's games. You know, I'd been centre mid the year before, and they went, oh, let's just put you up. And, you know, game 3 and 4, I was absolutely shocking. Like, couldn't touch a ball. I was like, put me back in defensive mid. You know, eventually I went back to goals because I wanted to play like out for the back.
Regret all the way back.
100%, man. They just needed a keeper that could like rush out a wee bit. But yeah, like, it must be a bit of an unknown at 37 to be going into a league and like, what is this even about? Because it's been delayed so long.
Oh, definitely. And that's since I came back, I was away for a long time, lived in a different country, and then came back here. Like, one of the first things I did was trying to get in a football team, because I'd been away for about 10 years, right? So I came back in my mid-30s, always knew people in Glasgow, but didn't really know anyone anymore. Mm-hmm. I left when I was in my early 20s and came back in my early mid-30s. So you think about how people's lives changed. The people I grew up with in my early 20s are teenagers, apart from the guys at schools, but they've all got families, moved to different cities. Just a social existence wasn't really here. So it was a kind of weird one. You're like, right, I'm home, but you're not really. Like, it's a pure different version of home. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I was like, right, first things first, I'll get into a football team. Messaged a couple of teams, and then this team that I play for now, Cahoon, up near between Bearsden and Drumchapel, that messaged us back, and he's like, come along. So I turned up, and then I've been with them since I got back. So it's been class. That's just a good group of guys, mm-hmm. And that's been this sort of platform of like your mates and your football team and all that. And that's why I've always been drawn to sport, any kind of sport, is that sort of camaraderie. I just think you can't beat it. So even at 37, I'm a wee bit feared to let that go.
100%.
I mean, even just being around the training or being around the lads or the dressing room and that, I don't know. I'm sure that you hear professionals talk about that, like when that goes away, they don't really know what to do with themselves.
100%.
That every season I start, I'm like, right, this will be the last season. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do after football? Just on a Saturday. Do you notice it, like with lockdown, when you go back, training and all that's fun, but see, just talking to different people and you get different inputs, different stories, just having a laugh, like you can't beat it. So that was a big thing, getting back to that.
And I've always, I've said since the start of this, and it'll sound like a broken record to some of the lads, but they're not in my brain, and they need to realise like the visions I've got for this, and I don't oversell anything, I've delivered on everything I've said this club, but in terms of obviously what I feel we can do and achieve, this is just a start. But in terms of how tight we are as a group, guys still don't really know each other.
I know.
We've got use of a community centre with a bar, with a chill area, the sports hub here, video screens, like couches in that area. Want to have some analysis sessions. We want to meet up before a game and have, like, I've spoke to local cafes or sponsors, bit of toast and coffee. I want people to get together. It's like right after the game. Obviously, if you've got something on, great, but you really need to make a point of coming down. Doesn't matter if you're just having a water or one beer. We decompress together. We enjoy the Sunday, and then cool. I want to get our games early so people are in that routine. I want us to have, monthly nights. Not just about getting pished, but that's when like guards go down, bonds are forged. At the moment, we all know the people we know, and it's a bit of a hello to the others. But we'll get so much stronger, and that's the other thing the teams in the league do have ahead of us. But we will catch up more than anyone, because I feel we've already gone through a lot more than others have, because we've been so active throughout the lockdown doing the community side. So as soon as we can add that personal touch, we're just going to want to play. I always tell a story. I was with this team, United Glasgow, for 3 or 4 years, and I'd been with them 2 seasons. And then they had an away day down to Leeds to play Yorkshire, St Pauli, Manchester Community, like all these teams that had similar ethoses. It was a bit of a kind of... But it was at one of these old Yorkshire, Scotland will have them as well, but like a football club proper. So they had like their own like building, changing rooms, a social hall. They had rugby pitches, football pitches. You drove into the complex, like amazing, like probably a junior setup. So we went down there, we stayed in the hotel, we're all in tracksuits and that, not for like being flashy, for togetherness. So I'd been playing with these guys 2 years. We went down, had the first night down there, something to eat, played the game the next day, went back, socialised with the team we'd played with, and then all up in the minibus the way home. Those are the closest guys in football to me now. Like, I'd known them 2 years, but in that 48 hours, it was like that. It clicked,
I totally agree with you. I was just chatting earlier on. Got a pal I played with in Cambodia, lives now down near Norwich, and we're just chatting, right, how do I get down and see him in the middle of June. So he's like started this group of all players that used to play in this team 10 years ago. So we're all going to get a meet in Norwich for a few pints in the summer. Right. Just off the back of what you're saying, right? There's just guys that you play with, you get steaming with. And also when you're at football, like, you have kind of highs and lows that you don't really get. It takes a lot of time in a friendship to get those kind of things. So you can be screaming at somebody bloody murder on a Saturday, and then 2 hours later you're having a couple of pints and having a laugh.
Yep.
I mean, so you kind of push those boundaries in your relationship quite quickly. Trust 100%. People like that. So you can't really beat it. And like you're saying, they last forever, don't they? Those kind of things you just kind of...
Definitely do. And, once we've got a full season and you've got your award nights and we've got the AGMs and fans are coming along, because we do have fans already, who care about what we're doing, and they'll get to know the club. It's just going to be something that I honestly think we'll all cherish once it gets how I want it to be. But that's obviously not been it. It's been external circumstances have meant those barriers. It also, like, people listening in, there's always the example of like Cole and Sheringham. It's not to say everybody in the team's going to be or needs to be best mates either, but there'll be that different level of respect once you see what everyone's putting in, not just at training, on games, on socialising, on getting a pint. This guy scored. You don't chat that much, but there's a pint, mate. You saved us a day,
I definitely. And it's inevitable you get kind of cliques within a team. But like you're saying, whenever you go to training or whenever you go to the pub after a game, whatever you do together, you do it together. You might go off into your own wee mini groups when you're there, but you're all still there. It all still counts together.
100%.
And I think kind of what you have instilled quite well with at Glasgow Saints. Do you know what I mean? Just in the background, you can already feel that when you get to training. Yeah. But it's even an achievement getting people turning up in their training gear.
Yeah, big time, man.
I've turned up and people just don't, I forgot it, it's in the wash and all that. And, do you know what I mean? It means something, that those wee things.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's it. It's all these wee standards. It's marginal gains and the wee 1%. It's like, yeah, on its own, not wearing your training kit doesn't have a huge thing. On its own, being late once or twice. But see all these things together, if they all went wrong, it's a disaster. And if they all go right, it's a slick operation where everyone respects the whole thing. It's all done for a reason, basically, you know.
I know. I like that.
Right, let's get to the main event. So it came clear in our football team group chat maybe 2 weeks ago. We were sharing this Amazon documentary. Anyone listening who's into sports, it's called Making the Mark or Hitting the Mark. I'll link it, but it's about Aussie rules. And it's along the lines of the kind of all or nothing documentaries with American football teams, the soccer teams, football teams. Where you get like access to behind the scenes at board level and the changing room with the players in their own lives. And this one, an Australian one, was, you know, I really do think even if you're not into sport, anyone listening should watch it. It's got like race tensions with the Aboriginal players and fans. It's got sexual misconduct issues there. There's like going through COVID, trying to run the financials of the business. It's a brilliant documentary. But we shared that in the group as a recommendation, and you popped up with, fun fact here. Is it Glasgow you're from or Ayrshire originally?
I'm from Glasgow,
Glasgow, yeah. So you were like, fun fact, I actually played for the Cambodian national team Aussie Rules. And we're all like, wait, what? So you said there was a story behind this. So I'd like you to just take me from the start, please.
Just dropped it in. With the start. So I played for Cambodia. I lived there for 10 years. So like I was saying earlier on, just came back about 2.5 years ago. So when was it? We went there in about 2006 or 2007 maybe. And we were all just working in bars and stuff, like post-uni. We're all just hanging about, working in town, working in the West End, just that kind of way when you're not really sure what to be doing with yourself. We had a friend that kind of went back and forward to Cambodia. He had like a bar there, but then he would come back here. So he'd live like 3 months. He'd live the winter there and come back. Yeah. It was kind of like you were aware of it, but it was in the distance. Anyway, we were at a party one night, just pure 4 a.m. stuff, and someone's like, "Right, I've had enough of this. Let's move." This boy, our pal Simon, says, "I'll pay for your and your flights." To me and my pal Duncan, but he says the caveat is it's one way. So I'll buy you a one-way flight, and then you can do what you want when you get there, but we all go together. And it's, do you know what I mean, 4 a.m, you're like, aye, very good, sounds class. So the talk was Argentina, right? And then I've fallen asleep. Woke up the next day, I was working in Brell in Ashton Lane. Woke up and I was going to go to work that day, and they were still up partying. He's like, "You're not buzzing?" I was like, "No, I'm stinking hangover and I need to go to work." Buzzing about what? And he was like, "We're all going to Cambodia." And I was like, "What? What?" I don't even think I knew where Cambodia was. I remember being like, "Come on, is that in Africa or Asia, you know?" And he was like, aye. He's like, "I booked his one-way flights." And I still kind of thought he was joking. And right enough, he booked 3 one-way flights. Left in about 12 days. And I thought, fuck it, let's go.
Did you have anything? Did you have like relationships or anything at the time, or were you a pretty free and single dude?
No, that's it. We were all in a similar boat. I think that's kind of where it came about from, and it was a bit of a moment of impulse. But I don't know how much he paid. He must have paid like $3,000 for these flights, and he just did it, and he just waxed it. So he probably had some regrets there, but I don't know. He's went on, met his wife, had a kid, now lives in LA. The other guy I went with lived in Cambodia for 8 years, took a job in Tokyo. He now lives there, has a wife and a child in Tokyo. So everyone's had these mad like splinter things off the back of that.
Aye, but you're number 10 for the Glasgow Saints, you know what I mean?
I know. LA, Tokyo, Glasgow Saints, but so mate, we just went out there. We thought, fuck it, we'll go. I remember telling my mum, I was about 21. I remember telling my mum, I was like, something to tell you. I'm going to Cambodia. She's like, what? I says, but I think I'm going there and I think I'm just going to stay. I've got a one-way flight. I'm just going to see what happens. And she was just like, sort of gobsmacked. A wee bit like, aye, very good. But at the same time, like, going to get a grip. So we just went out there and it was, I remember landing, we'd been in Bangkok for a couple of weeks and it was brilliant fun. Like, when you're that age, there was just so much going on, such a new culture, buzzing city, like, whatever, 30 million people. And then we got to Cambodia and we landed and we got in the back of this, like, banged up motorbike and it was just dirt tracks. And I was like, oh no, what have we done here, man? Like, no street lights. It was just pure, but it was brutal. Like, no skyline or anything. It was just a pure dust bowl. And we went down to this little, like, the hotel we were staying at, or place we were staying at, was just like this backpackers thing on a lake. And it was just a shithole, to be honest with you. The first week or so, I was like, wow, we've made a pure massive mistake here. But it was brilliant. Pure, it changed all our lives. We got there in such an interesting time because as we got there, the financial crisis was happening in Europe. So everything just sort of fell apart for our pals, and Europe was just a really tense place. The housing market, job market wasn't there. And at the same time, Asia was just changing, particularly Southeast Asia. Just money getting pumped into countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. And it just boomed so quickly. Massive influx of like international businesses, international money. Skyscrapers started going up. We landed, the tallest building in the city was a pagoda, about 4 stories high, and the rules were you weren't allowed to build higher than this pagoda. It was out of respect, and it just changed, and now it looks like a sort of international city, you know. In that short 10 years, it just changed. So we were there for that transition, and there was opportunities there in terms of work and stuff like that. So it was brilliant. But then that leads you on to playing a bit of sport. There's also that stuff with it. So the rules in football are you need to have parental, or is it your grandparents maybe? Like,
yeah, I think
yeah, Adam did that,
two generations.
Grandparents.
Yeah.
But in rugby, they changed the rules, and I don't know why they did it. I think they changed it. It sounds like there's a bit of manipulation, but it was like if you live in a country for 3 years or 5 years, I think it's 3 now, you can be nationalised and play for that country. So I think you get a lot of sort of Pacific Islanders playing for, like, Samoans and Tongolese players playing for Scotland or Wales or New Zealand and Australia. So I'd been in, it's the same rules apparently for the Aussie rules or whatever. So it was just a bunch of Aussie guys started it up, just wanted to do a bit of training, same as we'd start a football team. And I don't know how it sort of grew arms and legs and became like a national team.
Had you played Aussie rules before?
No, never. And the only reason I played Aussie rules, even more bizarrely, I played for the Cambodia national team at rugby. So if you've ever seen me, I look like the side of a fiver, do you know what I mean? I live in stone, soaking wet all my life. Never put weight on, never taking weight off. But I played at a charity game. A pal of mine was doing this charity rugby tournament. Phones me and goes, going to come along, we've not got any bodies. Right enough. And I played when I was younger. And whatever, there was somebody there from a local team, and he was like, you'd get a game for us, do you want to come down?
Like, good, obviously, for folk listening, like, on the wings and stuff, number 10, scrum half, you can just be fast, dynamic. It doesn't need to be this big number 8 brute.
Exactly. So that's what I played growing up. So I still had a bit of pace 10 years ago, unlike tonight, unlike these days. So ended up playing for this team, and there was a bunch of Irish boys, bunch of Kiwi lads, just good lads.
Social was brilliant, yeah.
Exactly. So they were like, right, come along, get to training, just come down, get a game. We played a few games, and they were like, the guy that coached our team also coached the national team. And he was like, look, how long have you lived here? I was like, 4 years. And he was like, would you be interested in playing for the national team? I was like, what? And it was me, this boy from Limerick, and a Kiwi boy.
Unreal.
Boy from England. So there was a handful of us expats, and then there was a sort of young group of Cambodian players. But it was the game was still so young there that they hadn't really developed to the age or to the size of whatever that they had a full team. So there was this sort of hybrid of like a handful of expats and then majority Cambodian players. And we all sort of got together and right enough played played for the Cambodia team, went to tournaments in Malaysia, Bangkok, played against the HSBC Penguins in a tens tournament, got absolutely murdered. So they're a touring team out of Hong Kong for the bank. They pick like the top under 21s players. So the guy that led them out was captain at England under 21 sevens team. He now plays for the Atlanta Falcons, American football.
Jesus.
I saw him in a documentary and I was like, I've played that guy.
That's him.
Absolute bruiser. I ran me over, nearly broke my shoulder. But we get pumped, kicked about the park. But what a time we had. You can imagine talking about like the camaraderie, getting a group, but all these sort of cross cultures, travelling together, rooming together.
Was it, sorry again to butt in, just so many questions. Was it like, I understand obviously, and I hope this isn't ignorant, but just from what you've said, it's obviously at that point it's a developing country, and not way down in standards, but it's on its way up. It's not up yet, and especially the sport's a developing sport, and it's all new. So obviously, I'm not imagining it as like international duty at the top level. But were you still like looked after? Was it like uniforms, buses, hotels?
Oh, absolutely. And there was a lot of local sponsors. Like at that point, we were sponsored by the sort of big city casino who had money, but people like a lot of the guys that were involved from the Westerners' perspective, or the sort of expats that were there involved in the team, had tended to have relatively high profile jobs. So they worked for like Aussie banks or stuff there. So they would get sponsorship money and manage to get associations built up. So the boys were always looked after in terms of travelling costs and stuff like that. It's all taken care of. And like, it's a ranking system for teams, right? So Cambodia was obviously ranked really low, but was a proper association and an affiliate team. So we still had to play World Cup qualifiers. And we drew Mongolia. And what happened? We played Mongolia at home, and then I was injured, so I couldn't go to the away game. And a friend of mine, English guy, worked in property development. He went, said he tackled this guy, just an absolute unit of man, and broke his collarbone. The impact. Remember him coming back, and he was just sort of drugged up for a few weeks. But good stories like that. So the boys were looked after, and then the young Cambodian players, a couple of them went on to sort of start their own gyms and fitness stuff there. So it opened up that kind of avenue for them. They weren't like celebrities like they were in the football. Mm-hmm. Football's the absolute sport there. But opened up careers for those guys. Then they got into training, whether it was fitness or other sports, and they sort of passed it on. So it was great to be part of that, particularly at that time. But we just got these amazing experiences. We turned up for a tournament in Malaysia, and they'd sort of finagled us getting into this tournament. I don't know how they managed to do it. And it's a big tournament called the Cobra Tens, and I think it was in Penang. And we turned up there, and we were just like sort of thrown together. We didn't really have trackies or all that, but we had zippers, but we were just sort of. I was maybe the tallest player in the team, which isn't saying a lot in a rugby team, right?
That's crazy, yeah.
Oh, mate, and we got there, and there was all these sort of really slick-looking buses and stuff, and teams getting off that looked like proper rugby teams, and I was like, just started getting a really bad feeling. I was like, what's going on here? But walked into the hotel, and the first person that was there was just surrounded by people. It was Tanu Manga.
Oh, wow.
Captain for New Zealand, like 100 caps, absolute legend. And I remember thinking, oh, fuck, what are we doing here? I was like, you're not playing, are you? And he was like, no, I'm coaching these guys. And it was like something like a Karate Kid, Cobra Kai, just turn up and they're all these pure specimens. So we just got absolutely pumped for a week. Every team just killed us. But what an experience. We played against the South African Army team, played against Fiji Auckland. Just an unbelievable experience, total once in a lifetime. And
all happening because you were steaming in a house party and just went over for a few years.
Exactly, mate.
So was the Aussie rules, was at a level, so that was all happening before the Aussie rules thing?
Yeah, that's right. And there was a couple of guys that sort of did crossover, that did both of them. And I hadn't really heard Aussie rules. Or I was aware of it as a game, but I hadn't heard of it in terms of playing it. Mm-hmm. So one of the guys, big guy Grant, was like, why don't you come along, just get a couple of sessions in, rugby season's over. And there was always a thing of like trying to poach each other's players so that they had enough numbers to keep both going. So I was like, right, enough. And just a just a fun group of lads, mostly Aussie guys. And there was a really big AFL Asia push by the actual AFL official in Australia. So they were trying to get players from China, from Singapore, from other affiliate countries. So they had like the proper AFL stamp, and it became this AFL Asia League. So there was sort of tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 was China, Singapore, Malaysia, countries with big money and big expat communities. Mm-hmm. So like the Singapore team were all Aussie guys that had got into banking. Do you know what I mean? Like pure Patrick Bateman looking boys, like with perfect physique, these Aussie guys throw money about. So they always had an unbelievable team. And then there was like the second tier was probably Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam. So we'd just play these guys all the time. We'd tour every year, go to all these countries. They'd come in, just would play these official games. We played in the AFL Asia tournament a couple of times. Did all right. I think we maybe won the tier 2 once, but we were playing against guys that were decent, like farm players that would come across for a season, play with one of these teams, go back. So we played some pretty handy guys, then also some older guys that weren't so handy. So I played, I don't know, 15, 20 times for them.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. Brilliant, mate. Absolutely unbelievable.
And
but that's just would never have got chances like that.
Yeah.
Not being in that situation. So it was unbelievable.
It's crazy. I often think about there's not a lack of sports obviously in Scotland or the UK, but like places like America or Australia, that even Spain, you know, like they definitely push a lot more. And I remember looking into it when I was doing kind of coaching and stuff at college, like many years ago, just after school, that like we're a country that kind of tries to put people into the sports that we like, whereas those countries do a lot more at youth level about like, let's just find out what their basic skills are and then introduce them to. So for example, you know, we did some things at the college thing. We were still young guys. It wasn't like teaching older guys to be coaches. It was like, right, you've just left school. So they had like a day where we would just do different things, right? How's your vertical jump? How's your sprint? How's your, like, if I throw these balls at you, what's your natural reactions and that? And then like they would match people up. And like I remember being put into, right, you'll be really good at volleyball, and then playing some sessions of volleyball and absolutely loving it. And then you just think like, if I'd done this for a wee boy, would I have been like brilliant at this sport? Whereas I've just been like decent enough to get a game at football. You know, for example, finding out what the core skills are. And obviously my point with that is you never would have even played Aussie rules if you'd stayed in Scotland. And then, you know.
Definitely not. And I suppose being in a country or a situation like that, maybe the community's a bit narrower for stuff like that. So you hear about stuff and you're a bit more free to just go and do things, right? You're not so regimented in the area that you live and the group of friends you've got and stuff like that. You're quite open to just doing stuff. But like you mentioned, people from America and from Australia in particular were just crazy about sports. And the biggest thing was it was like men and women would do everything together. So like American friends that would like organise softball tournaments or dodgeball, like just like stuff that's a bit silly but a good day out, and everyone takes part. There's nothing to it. But I think the weather, as silly as it sounds, has a big part to play with.
Definitely.
They definitely live like a much more outdoor lifestyle, and sport becomes a natural part of that, you know. Whereas we in Scotland, if you get 2 or 3 nice days, it's like, right, where can we go and get a bevy outside? Is the first thing you think of. You don't think, right, where can we go and play a bit of sport? Yeah. And then you don't have like a bevy or a bit of food afterwards. I think that plays a big part. But those countries are definitely so focused around sport. Like your lifestyle it's so ingrained in your lifestyle, I think.
It's true, like we get a bad rep here. The stats are the stats, you know, the most heart disease, the most obesity. However, you know, I certainly grew up where I couldn't ask my mum for like £5 a couple of nights a week. Like she was a single mum, like, so I could play football until it got dark, you know. And I did. We were the last generation, I think, that would just be out until it was dark. Doesn't matter if it was piss and rain, all that. But now kids, you know, like, obviously there's other distractions as well with like Xboxes and stuff like that, but like there's nowhere to play, you know. So you can only play you've got to hire pitches or stuff like that. Like I would have just been playing in the car park all the time. Like couldn't go and pay for a pitch. We actually used to go to McDermott, have an AstroTurf right by the stadium, and they rent that out to like Brecon, Stenhousemuir, Arbroath, like loads of places, teams to get income. And me and my mates used to just like go and play at the side and stuff like that. And for the most part, the gaffers and that were all right until they had to like come down and they'd be like, right, get off, you know.
Exactly. Just chance it. But I think you're totally right. Like the way things are these days, from a safety perspective with kids, it's great that they have to be in more organised situations and stuff like that. And you have to be so conscious of that. But it's also to the detriment that it does have to be through an organised group. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to get your kid enrolled, then they have to settle in, then you have to like get them to training, you have to pay for this equipment or the sessions like you're saying, and not everyone either can afford it, has the time, or just knows how to get involved in it. And that's how any time growing up you'd get involved in a football team. We should just be playing football at the park and someone would go, I'm going to a soccer camp this year, I'm going to a football camp in the summer. Do you know what I mean? Then you'd go, you'd meet other people, and it was all quite organic in terms of the growth or the networks that you would find as a wee kid. And I just don't know how parents do it now. It must be, other than, especially now when they're not at school, like how do you get kids involved in a sport? How do you know that's the sport they want to do? Like I couldn't tell you where the nearest tennis courts are, for example, other than down at the park, but they're like, you need to pay to go on them. So I just don't know. I don't know where you would start in terms of getting your kid involved in stuff like that.
That's an important thing. Up at did you train at any of the sessions when we were just at the park?
At the bowling green?
Yeah. So they've repurposed them. There's a lot of money from Milnbank Housing. Like they've got on one of the greens now, all finely kind of lawn moored, and they've got nets up for tennis. You can just borrow a racket. They've got bowls out there. They've got putting. You can take a football and some goals down the bottom. So I think there's a lot more of this stuff as a focus. We're on the Sports Council now for Denniston and surrounding areas as well. So there's a lot more money going into that, community asset transfers. Though I say too much on a podcast, I doubt anyone would be listening, but we've actually submitted a wee bid to try and get a place, which would then mean we would run it and we could host a lot more sessions for kids and stuff like that, as well as the football teams we want to have. So women's team, first team, community team. So hopefully, you know, we're catching on, but it's taken a long time. But yeah, I think in these warmer countries, for example, they all look ripped in that. Yeah, because they've got their tops off all the time. You know, like why would we be bothered about it when we've got 4 layers on? So like it's all a wee knockdown effect. Like your culture, if you live in a cold, wet, rainy place, you're not going to be that. Right, I'll just get up in the morning and run a 5K if it's piss and rain outside. You know, it's not the same mindset. You really need to be like, you have something in your sights. If I'm going to go out and train in the winter and the cold and the rain, we need to have something like this team, and you need to get fit for. It's so easy to just blame people for being lazy, but if I didn't play sports, like it's not an inspiring place to get up and get out, you know?
Totally, mate. And another thing that comes from it, like you mentioned, having a women's team there. Here, like since I was a kid, sport has been segregated in terms of like, you talk about it now in terms of professional sport, you've got men's football, women's football, right, fine. But even when you're at school, from like primary school, secondary school, it's like, right, the boys are playing football, the girls are playing netball.
Yeah.
We didn't have integrated sports until, like, that's me, until you're 18 years old. So you like, that sort of becomes systemic and kind of institutionalized, and you just think, right, sports are segregated.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't imagine saying to your girlfriend or your wife or your partner, whatever, do you want to come along to football? Whereas when I was in an environment like this, like the majority of sports that we did either were completely integrated or had things that functioned at the same time. So there was a women's Aussie rules football team. All other sports that we did, there was either a women's team that trained together and mixed in, or you just played the sports together.
Yeah.
We played tennis at the weekend and it was always mixed. Do you know what I mean? It's just that you just didn't even think about it. Yeah, I think that's part of the issue, is like it's always spoken about as like two really opposite things that just can't coexist. Do you know what I mean?
Totally,
it's
man.
A totally different mindset, and that becomes part of the challenge. It's like, why do we always need to talk about this as two separate things? Everyone can you can do things together. Do you know what I mean? Especially with amateur level. It's not like we've got fucking professionals pure that are going to be impeded by people coming along and learning for the first time or getting used to that environment. There's loads of people at that level, beginner, intermediate, or whatever. So there's no reason we can't be encouraging that environment. I think it's a really big mindset thing that has to change first.
That's massively a part of why we want a community team, so that when we get offered friendlies, we've already been offered them. We just, obviously, it was pre-pandemic and stuff, but like when there's a show racism, the red card, or a, kick it out, or a anti-bigotry specific in Glasgow, when these teams want to do like a friendly against a local team, it's teams like us that'll be spotted and be asked if we'd like to be involved. We want to have community teams that have, we want to have a women's team because there's a women's league. We want to have a first team men's team because there's a men's league. We want a community drop-in session where everyone can go. Mm-hmm. So you can tailor how full on and how, competitive you want it to be. If you just want the fun, welcoming, inclusive aspect of it, that's where the community teams are. And there'll be some top players that don't want the stress or pressures of having to perform every Sunday. They want to play a friendly for a good organisation. So that's what the community team is going to be, man, and have that mix. And it's also, it's never really come up yet to the players, but that's why we're in this, for many reasons, but that's why the league we're in is unaffiliated. There's teams there that honestly are higher standard than a lot of the affiliate teams. I've played for a couple of them, and the United Glasgow split, so half of them went to Saturdays and half of them stayed in the league. I played in a few games, and the teams we were playing on Saturdays were no better, like some way worse than some of the teams in the Sunday league. But our team is unaffiliated because there's charity teams there who have transgender players, and in the past I've had talented women's players who want to play in the men's team. That's not allowed by SFA rules.
Is it not?
No, so to be totally inclusive, I mean, it's not to say that the SFA are being dinosaurs, it's just obviously they've not caught up there to have thought about this. It's not in their rule book. So for insurance at the moment, it's a no. There's a team which is all about kind of equal rights for everyone, refugee welcome and everything in United Glasgow. And there's loads of other charity teams, including ourselves, who want to help with kind of food poverty and inclusion. So if they had a player who wanted to play in that session who was transgender or not male, then they wouldn't be able to play, and that kind of goes against everything. So that's why this league decided to be like, right, we won't be affiliated. That means we won't be in Scottish Cups. We'll have to do all our cups internal, but it's attracted the right calibre of team, in my opinion, because it's all people who wouldn't really have an issue with that,
Yeah, and I think if that message can get out, that it's open, like not only open, but encouraged for everyone. And when you say everyone, that means everyone, no matter how you identify or what you want to get out of it. Like just to have a place of inclusion and that you can go and have a laugh. Like we started a women's team in Cambodia just because there was so much demand for it, like a lot of people asking. My little sister got involved after I left, and she'd never played football in her life, never really played sport, and she loves it. Like she's obsessed by football. She came back here on holiday. She lives there, by the way, and she came back here and was like, "Oh, can I come and watch his train? Can we go and play a bit of football?" And it was mad because, like, for 30 years or 25 years, she's never mentioned that. So I think there's a lot of curiosity as well about everything else of people that want to get, and you get stimulated by the camaraderie that we've spoken about already. Do you know what I mean? Those things all come along, and just having a group of people that are similar age, do similar stuff. It's hard to meet people like that with your job and your life going on. So it's a great way to meet people as well. So just from that aspect, I think it's brilliant.
Definitely. And I do want to be
fun for it.
Do also want to be like clear that there are those, it is a women's session, a men's session, community session, because then it gives people the flexibility. Like part of the reason we've really sped up, we weren't going to launch a women's team until we'd done a season because there's so much work goes into one team. But obviously, I don't want to wait 2 years till we do it, and we've been delayed a year. So we're pushing it on. Really, the Sarah Everard case really struck a chord with me, that women were outpouring on social media saying that, like, when the sun goes down, they can't exercise. And I just thought that's disgusting, So we're like, right, we want to set up a place where, if they don't want men at the training as well, I get that. That's why we're recruiting for female coaches. Now, obviously, male coaches could be just as good, but I want there to at least be the option where women are running their own session. They don't need men to structure this for them. There's just as many talented and capable coaches and players who are female than men. That's just a stigma. So, there'll be that women's team, there'll be a men's team, there'll be the community team. But if anyone from either session, wants to go along and, probably more women come into the men's session if they wanted that, then that'll be open for discussion. There certainly won't be any hard barriers to it,
Aye, good on you. I think it's brilliant. And there's it Glasgow United that are doing quite well in the women's league here. And did they get in the Champions League quarterfinals or something? I know they got hammered by Wolfsburg, maybe.
That's Glasgow City.
Glasgow City, because they used to see them in East. A few of the girls from the team would be in there having their coffee before and after training and stuff.
That's right.
There's already some football happening in the community down there.
Oh yeah, Glasgow City are brilliant. They
really high level,
Aye, they play up at Peters Hill and have Champions League games at Peters Hill at Peasy. Yeah, amazing, eh? But United Glasgow, the team that's in our league that a few of us used to play for, their women's team is really good as well. They play in a league. So you have to be, there's no AMI league for the women's teams as well, which is something, I'm getting a wee light bulb moment, but I don't want to take on more than I can chew. But so you have to go into the semi-pro one. So it's not the Glasgow City level, but it's Kilmarnock's team, Stranraer's team, Ayrshire. They're all in this league of semi-pro. So it doesn't go amateur, semi-pro, pro. It's just amis and semi-pro and then pro.
So you've never played before to semi-pro.
Exactly. So, I mean, if they want to be in the league, obviously. But I think that, as well as that means it's pretty tough for them, I think it opens a lot of doors because you get some naturally talented women who are playing, and then Hibs coach can see them. And then it's a lot easier step up to go for Hibs to Glasgow City than it is just playing our level to a Champions League team, isn't it? That sport's growing rapidly, quite rightly. So I think it's a great time for women to get into it. Like you said with your wee sister, even if they've never played the sport before, if you've got an interest or you just want to meet people or you just want to keep fit in a safe environment, that's something, anyone listening who is excited by that or interested by that, just check Glasgow Saints FC and there'll be updates online, and we want to host that there because I think it's a great time to get into the women's game, especially. There's opportunities everywhere.
My sister, as an example, there just didn't always probably wanted to do to play football or to do something, but just didn't know how to go about it. And I know I've got friends here that say the same thing. I'm playing football. Oh, I'd love to do that, and then I've got no direction to give it. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hope it doesn't come across as condescending or patronising, but there just isn't anything that I know of. And there might be loads, and I'm just being ignorant. But there's nothing I know or how to advise my friends on where to go to the women's league. And like you're saying, just a place to go. So I think it's great if something can do there, and then just go with it and get the ball rolling with it.
Well, yeah, we can obviously chat more offline, but yes, just start, if anyone gives you interest, just start collating the details, send it to me. I'll be creating a WhatsApp group in the next couple of weeks, and we're interviewing coaches at the moment, so it's something that I'm looking to within the month.
That's class.
100%.
Put people your way.
Well, mate, what a chat it's been. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Love that, big man.
Yeah, you too, brother. And I'll let you get on with the rest of your day, but yeah, thanks for sharing your story.
Good man, and best of luck with this. Good on you.
Thanks, brother. I'll see you at training soon, all right?
Right, big man.
Take care, bro. Bye, mate.
Yeah, we're talking about you.